So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Alexandria Library for tonight's information session. My name is Megan Zimmerman, and I'm one of the librarians with the library. And I'm so glad you joined us for tonight's introduction or explanation of the Capital Area Solar Switch group buying for solar panels that's been arranged and organized by Solar United Neighbors. We're very glad to welcome back Benjamin Hoyne, who is the Virginia Program Director with Solar United Neighbors, to explain to us how this works and how we can get involved. So Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Megan, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody for taking time out of your evening. Sounds like Tracy can't hear me. Can you hear me, Megan? Yeah.
I can hear you. Tracy, can you hear Ben? I think he's the most important person to hear.
Or if you can't hear anyone, maybe check the speakers or the volume on your laptop or computer. Sometimes that works, or it might have to chime back in. Anyways, I'll keep rolling. If anybody else can't hear me, please let me know. So again, Ben Hoyne, Solar United Neighbors, abbreviation SUN. You can see in my name here on Zoom. We refer to ourselves as SUN. Apropos of the sun in my face right now, apologies for that. I'm not usually talking from home and at this time of night. And so hopefully in 20 minutes or so, the sun will be out of my face. I'm trying to make it a little better. Let's see if I stand over here, maybe it's slightly better. Yeah, so first thing is, let me try to share my screen and just make sure that we're here. And are you all seeing the full screen of the Capital Area Solar Switch? Wonderful. All right, so again, I'm Ben Hoyne. I'm with Solar United Neighbors. I am based in Richmond, and so hopefully, we're a few hours behind y'all in terms of the storms tonight. Hopefully, we'll keep power, as will all of you. And as Megan mentioned, talking tonight about the Capital Area Solar Switch, and also just kind of a general Solar 101 overview about how to go solar and what you need to know to go solar. So first, a little bit about Solar United Neighbors. We are a vendor-neutral national 501c3 nonprofit. We really help people get educated and empowered about what they need to know to go solar on their home. In 2007, back in Washington, D.C., our founder, Anya Schoolman, there in the photo, banded together with about 100 of her neighbors to go solar because they realized it was incredibly cumbersome and confusing. They were hearing different things about legally what you need to do permit-wise. Solar installers were telling them different things about how to install solar on their roof. The costs were wildly different. And so they banded together, again, about 100 homes in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Washington, D.C., just across the river from y'all. And ultimately, 50 of them went solar after 2 years of working through the process together. And that attracted media attention and all sorts of stuff. And different folks from across the district and then across the country began calling Anya and others to figure out how they could do that in their neighborhood. So Sun organically was kind of founded that way as just a volunteer project that ultimately had legs. And so now 15 years later, I guess it's 2023, I need to update my slide there. We have members in all 50 states. We've run well over 300 solar co-ops or solar bulk buying groups, which is what we're talking about tonight. We have over 50 staff across 5 time zones. So the 4 contiguous time zone and then also in Puerto Rico, which I think is Atlantic time. Our impact on the ground, specifically in Virginia, we've helped 1,200 families in Virginia go solar and installed almost 10 megawatts of solar in Virginia, and across the country, over 8,000 families have been helped by us to go solar, and pushing 70 megawatts, which is really the size of a utility scale solar farm that we've helped facilitate installations on rooftops across the country. And as I mentioned, in 13 states, federal districts, and territories. Additionally, we're working towards an equitable energy system. We know that rooftop solar lets communities invest and it brings local jobs and helps create a new energy system that everyone can participate in. So, sorry, just clicking on my slides. Here we go. And here's our theory of change, just so folks know at Solar United Neighbors. First and foremost, we help folks go solar, kind of like what we're talking about tonight, our bulk purchase campaign, Solar Switch. We also have folks join together. We do a lot of happy hours and other things like that. We had an event in Alexandria back in June at a brew pub there in Alexandria. I'm sure we'll do something again next spring. Additionally, we have a lot of online resources. We have a Solar United Neighbors of Virginia Facebook page where you can come and ask questions. And then we have a really active and robust email listserv where you can get as technical as you want with a lot of solar experts and distributed generation experts from across the Commonwealth on that active listserv. And then ultimately, we also fight for energy rights. Mostly we do that at the General Assembly here in Richmond to help create an avenue for more people to go solar. We've helped pass legislation on net metering, which we'll talk about a bit later, helping make sure that HOAs or homeowners association can't put unnecessary burdens on folks when they go solar. We really view ourselves as representing solar owners and potential solar owners in a nonpartisan fashion. We do engage a little bit on the local level at times. You might have seen the news. For many years, we've been working to engage Prince William County. They had the worst solar permitting, residential permitting process in the Commonwealth by far, most expensive, most cumbersome, most time consuming, and through really years of advocacy at the Board of Supervisors and local media and elsewhere, we finally actually were able to secure removal of the permitting costs, which was actually not our request, but that's a kind of a temporary solution. But most importantly, we're encouraging Prince William County to adopt an app called Solar App Plus that was developed by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory out in Colorado that just helps make solar permitting much more streamlined and efficient. So again, that's how we do our work, and we're a 501c3, not affiliated with any solar company or any solar technology. Again, we're here to help educate and empower you and hold your hand throughout the process if you want to go solar. And so some of the things we'll talk about today, we'll talk about solar technology, kind of the basics, what you need to know, how solar fits on your roof, the economics of solar, and then ultimately we'll talk about the Solar Switch program. So just checking in real quick, Megan, if there's anything in the chat I need to worry about.
Yeah, Rose had a question. Does Sun work with condos in Virginia?
Condos, we work with anybody, so it's not necessarily will we work with condos. One of the challenges you have with condos is the ownership of the roof, and we'll kind of talk about this a bit as we move forward. Basically, what you need in order to go solar, the easiest way to go solar is to own the roof and also live in the home. Let's talk with Megan a bit earlier. As a renter or something, the financial incentive is disconnected. The person that pays the cost of the solar is the person putting the installation on the roof, the owner of the roof, and the person that benefits financially is the person paying the electricity bill. So in terms of a condo, often you have shared ownership of roof. You might have 2 or 4 units or whatnot that kind of share a roof. And so you would need to figure out how that works. If do you need 2 to 4 people? How decisions get made if you were to get a new roof or something like that? And solar would kind of fall under that. And does that mean you need to get everybody on board or whatnot? And so if everyone's on board, certainly it can be done. But that would be digging into the weeds of who owns the roof and whatnot, because ultimately solar is going to impact the roof of the building. All right, so how do solar panels work? So solar photovoltaic PV converts solar energy to electricity. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Another technology you might see is solar thermal that heats hot water for for pools and hot tubs and other things, especially down in Florida or maybe even Hampton Roads. That's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about solar photovoltaic, or PV. Here's a photo just of components of the panel. The important thing to know is that the panel and the solar cell is really well protected. Solar panels generally are hail resistant. They have an incredibly long lifespan. 25 years is the industry standard for a minimum of 25 years for a solar panel life. When you have multiple solar panels, that's called a solar array or a solar system. So we'll talk a bit about that. The panels are often, it used to be about 3 feet by 5 feet. Now they're maybe 4 by 6, and often about 40 pounds or up to 50 even. And the important thing to note is panels are measured in wattage. And we'll talk about this a bit more in the next slide. And solar panels generate electricity in direct current, also known as DC. And your house uses alternating current, or AC. And so there needs to be an inverter process, inversion of the electricity, converting it and conditioning it for use in your home. We'll talk a bit about that here in a minute. So again, I talked about how the panels are measured in wattage. So when you have, 1,000 watts, that is also known as 1 kilowatt or kW. And so if you were to get a proposal from a solar company and say, hey, I want to get solar in my home, and they were to say, okay, there's, in this example, there's 12 panels there. This is 3,600 watts. So that's also 3.6 kW, 3.6 kilowatts. It doesn't really matter how many panels you have. In this example, there's 12 panels at 300 watts, 3.6 kW, but you could just as easily have 9 panels at 400 watts that would also be 3.6 kW. So when people talk about, oh, I have 12 panels or 8 panels, that's not really the important thing. The important thing is to know the wattage. So like the 3.6 kW, that is kind of the power at its maximum production that your system can handle. It's never going to produce more than 3.6 kilowatts. It's kind of like the horsepower, so to speak, of your solar array. Another important thing to know in terms of technology is kilowatt hours. So it's kWh. So that is how many kilowatts are used over an hour. And when you look at your electricity bill, and if you're in Alexandria, probably most of you have Dominion as your electricity provider, you will have 12 months of usage, 12 months of kWh on your electricity bill. You can look at your bill right now, and it would tell you what you used not only in July, but also in January and even October of last year, as an example. It'll have the past 12 months of kWh. And kWh is the amount of kilowatts produced over a period of time, as simple as that. The average system size in Virginia is actually probably more like 7 to 8, getting a little bit bigger. So the 3.6 kW example is a really small example. But I have a 5.1 system on my house, also smaller, much smaller than the 8 kW system. A bit of a misnomer, you don't need to offset all of your electricity production. My electricity production is offset by maybe 50 to 60%. I have an old house. It's really inefficient in terms of walls and windows. We also have an EV, so that uses a fair bit of electricity. So, that's what worked for my budget and worked for my household. And so it might work for you, 5 kilowatts, 10 kilowatts. 15 kilowatts is usually about the largest you want to go. If you go over 15 kilowatts, you have to pay a monthly demand charge, which can really increase the amount of cost that you're paying per month. So again, kind of in that 5 to 15 kW is really the sweet spot. And often people will say, hey, I have a 2,000 square foot home, how much kW do I need? And again, that's where we talk about, reading your electricity bill over the past 12 months, because not all 2,000 square foot homes are created the same, right? Again, you can talk about how's the insulation? How are the windows? How many people live there? Is it 2 people? Is it 4? Is it 6? I mean, that's going to vary your electricity load a lot. Are you heating and cooling with electricity, or do you have a gas furnace, right? That's a major factor. Do you have an EV? All those kinds. Does anyone work from home? Those are all questions that are going to influence how much electricity you're using per month. Again, as I mentioned, another key component behind the panels is the inverter. You can see here, the string inverter is not really something you're going to use unless you're doing a ground mount. It's really the string inverters, the DC optimizer in the middle, or a micro inverter, and both of those are going to be underneath the panel, and they're really going to be able to tell you which, the production output of your panel nowadays, or at the panel level, which is great nowadays. You can look at it on an app. You'll get an app where you can see, let's again say you have 12 panels. You can look at the app and it'll have all 12 panels on there, and it'll tell you the daily production of those. And that way, if anything went wrong, if all of a sudden you're like, well, my panels aren't producing as well, and you can look and go, oh, panel number 3 is not working anymore, right? You can do that just from your phone. And so that's really a great way to A, troubleshoot, and B, if you had to bring an installer out to fix the problem, they'd know right away, oh, panel number 3, maybe the inverter's not working, or something like that, and need to go up and fix it. I certainly don't want you to go up on your roof. You should never have to go up on your roof and work on your panels in any way. And you don't need to go up and clean them, brush snow off them, anything like that. Once you get your inverter picked out, then you'll have a racking system. This is an asphalt shingle roof, which is the most common roof type we have in Virginia. A very standard racking system. It does have some penetrations into the roof. There'd be warranties and stuff to cover any leaks or anything, which is very rare. There's other types of roof that work well. Standing seam metal roof actually doesn't have any roof penetrations because it has clips that work on there. A rubber membrane roof is also really good. The one roof type that really doesn't work for solar is a slate. Slate is just such a fragile and delicate kind of material that most solar installers will not work on slate. And so it's just, you might be able to find somebody that can, but the risk of, of fracturing some of those tiles is pretty high. And so rarely do we find folks that work on slate. I don't think in the solar switch, they would be willing to do that. Another key component to solar is your electrical panel. This is where the solar is going to hook into your home. There'll just probably be just a very simple connection into your electrical panel. Most homes don't need an upgrade before going solar. You'll find that one of the first questions the solar installer asks you, number one is can they see your Dominion bill, because they want to know your usage over the last 12 months. That'll help them appropriately size the system you need. Number two, can they see a photo of your electrical panel? And what that will tell them is, do you have space for a 240 breaker that's going to go in your electrical panel and run the solar? And if not, if you need to do an electrical upgrade, the great news is there's tax credits available for that. You could certainly do the upgrade as part of the solar switch as well. And I think it's a 30% tax break as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, federal tax credit that you would pay for the electrical upgrade, and then when you file your taxes, the following year you would be able to take a 30% tax credit off the electrical panel upgrade in addition to the solar. And then kind of basically, what's a good roof for solar? It's a bit more of an art than a science. The first thing to look at is the orientation of the roof, which direction the roof faces. The best direction for solar is south. We're in the northern hemisphere, so in essence, you want to face towards the equator. If you don't have a south-facing roof, west also works really great. You have that good afternoon sun. Even west by northwest will work well. East will work. The morning sun, especially east by southeast. The one direction that doesn't really work very well is north. North or north by northeast are the least beneficial for solar. Not to say they won't work, but your return on investment in the production of your solar will be lower, so it'll take longer to pay off the system and pay off the investment. Additionally, you want to have little to no shading on your roof, like where the solar would be, especially during those kind of peak generation hours, about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. or so. You want to make sure you have enough space to mount panels. And so, you need generally about at least 200 square feet of space. And that's free of dormers and chimneys and gables and all that sort of stuff. And then you don't need a new roof, but you do need a newer roof, an undamaged roof. We recommend a minimum of 10 years of lifespan remaining in your roof. One of the biggest costs of solar is labor. And so if you were to put solar in now and need a new roof in 5 years, you'd have to pay somebody to go up and uninstall the panels, probably, potentially even store those panels while then you got that new roof, and then come back and reinstall the panels. And that's just a lot of labor costs that you're, not really going to want to pay. So if you're kind of just a couple of years out from a new roof, you might want to wait and do that all together. It is important to know the new roof, even if you need to go solar, is not covered by the IRS tax credits. That's something they issued, a decision they issued a few years ago. And so you're on your own in terms of a new roof, at least as far as federal tax credits go. And if you have the space, I know that can be hard in Alexandria, but maybe if you're a bit farther out and a roof doesn't work well for you, you could do a ground mounted system. Some of the great benefits for a ground mounted system is you can decide which direction to face it, right? So you might be able to face it south or west. And so it's going to be a lot more efficient, a lot more productive on solar. But it also is going to cost more, right? You can look at this photo. Solar panels are just going to fasten to your roof, whereas in this, they had to build that ground mount structure. So there's more parts and materials. In addition, there's more labor in order to build this. And then additionally, they're going to need to trench some wire, trench some cable from the solar array to your meter, likely in your home. And that'll cost money as well. We generally don't recommend more than 50 to 100 feet of trenching. Once you get past that point, it's really expensive. And again, the benefit might not outweigh the cost. Some frequently asked questions we get, warranties. Again, panels are expected to have a 25-year lifespan, and so you will generally get a 25-year production warranty. That'll kind of be for the panel to maintain its efficiency. They have no moving parts, so there's really not a lot that can fail and degrade. You'd have usually a 10 to 25-year manufacturer defect. That would be like if a piece of metal was off the side or something like that, something that wouldn't affect the production of the panel, but might just be a manufacturer defect. Inverters usually are 10 to 25 years warranty, and then the installer warranty is usually at least 3 to maybe 10 years. That's for workmanship, like a roof penetration or a conduit run or something like that. People ask about homeowners insurance. The solar array becomes part of your home, so you certainly should contact your insurance company and let them know that you're thinking about getting solar. They should be able to offer you a quote. All the kind of major insurance companies nowadays are really familiar with solar. The industry standard is that your quote either will not go up or will go up slightly. There is one national company that we've heard that has a tremendous increase in solar. So if that's you, we just encourage you to shop around a bit. Maintenance really for you, these are maintenance free. Again, don't need to clear the snow off. We get plenty of rain that will clean them. They're hail resistant. As I mentioned, there's an online monitoring with your phone. So really, you do not need to get on your roof. Systems will last 25 years, as I mentioned, at least. HOAs, again, that's a question that we've worked on. And as I mentioned, if you're in an HOA, some of it depends on how the HOA is governed. But again, we worked at the General Assembly back in 2020 to make it so that HOAs couldn't unduly kind of restrict your ability to go solar. If you're in a historic district, like Old Town Alexandria or something like that, I would certainly encourage you to speak with the installer. They are very well versed in working with all the jurisdictions in Northern Virginia and the whole capital area, and they would be able to answer those specific questions for you better than me. So with that, I'll take a quick pause and check in with Megan on the chat.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have a couple related to sort of your explanations now. Rich asks, I guess specifically about maintenance and care for them. What about squirrel guards?
Yeah, so squirrel guards is a great question. So that'd be an option that you have. There's various add-ons that when you get solar. Squirrel guards is really, I guess, if you have squirrels that have access to your roof, then squirrel guards is definitely something you would want to look into. There's wires underneath, so the last thing you want is any kind of critters that can, get in there, create a home or chew wire. So if squirrels have access to your roof now, I would certainly highly recommend squirrel guards, and that's a standard kind of additional offering in the solar switch, and really from any solar installer. That would be something. There's another thing called snow guards or ice guards. That would be, you kind of maybe if seen on some old roofs where if somehow ice or snow kind of fell off, you might see this at a ski lodge or something like that, fell off your roof in one fell swoop. If it happens to be your sidewalk or porch or something is underneath, you kind of want to be able to break that flow of snow or ice up so it doesn't kind of come down in one fell swoop. So they do have snow guards as well. That just kind of depends on your home. I don't have squirrel guards on my house because I have a 2-story house and there's not trees right around it. So squirrels can't get on my roof, but they are on my neighbor's roof. So it just depends on each person, but certainly that would be offered by the solar installer.
Thanks, Ben. And then a couple of people, it looks like, wanted to know if you could explain a little bit more the difference between a kilowatt and kilowatt hour.
Yes, and I'll preface this by saying I'm not a scientist or an engineer, so I know just enough to be dangerous. So a kilowatt is, again, it's kind of the measure of power that your system will use. And so it's kind of like the maximum amount of power that your solar array could generate. So let's say it's 8 kilowatts. So at peak production, let's say at noon on a perfectly clear day, your solar array could generate 8 kilowatts of electricity. Over an hour, it might not be doing that for a full hour, but over an hour, it's how much electricity is used. So the kW is kind of like how much is generated. The kWh is more how much is used. I don't know if that really explains it. I mean, there's YouTube videos that are an hour long or 20 minutes or 5 minutes that you might be able to understand a bit more. kWh is kind of like flow. Some people talk about it as water flowing through a tube. It's it's how much flow. It's like the flow of electricity, if that makes sense. So you are billed in kWh, you're billed in kilowatt hours. That's the amount of electricity your home uses over a period of time. Obviously, it's using different amounts of electricity at different times of the day. So in a 24-hour period, you might have a certain amount of kilowatt hours that were utilized. It's, in essence, when your meter is spinning. And kilowatts is the kind of the power potential of your solar array. Don't know if that clears it up at all. It's about the best I can do.
Thank you. And we have one more question, but I think maybe we'll wait until you get more into the capital area solar switch for that one.
Sounds great. All right, we'll keep on rolling. So some more important terminology we have, as I mentioned, number one here is a solar array, and then under your panels or your array is your inverter. And so the electricity, the direct current electricity flows from your panels through the inverter, and it's inverted to AC or alternating current, so that it's conditioned for your home. And then that flows into your electrical panel. And then anything that your house needs, any electricity needs your home has, will first and foremost be used by the solar panels. So if the solar panels can fill 100% of your electrical load in your home at that instant moment, it will do that. If there's surplus electricity, again, say, in the middle of the day, nobody's home, it's sunny day, the surplus would be pushed out through the meter onto what we call the grid, which is in essence the poles and wires, and likely sent to your neighbor or something like that. If your solar panels are not generating enough, cloud passes over, it's nighttime, it's really hot, and you're using electricity, whatever the situation might be, your home is still going to use everything generated by the solar panels, but at whatever is needed to make up for the difference to get to 100% is going to come from the poles and wires, pass through your utility meter, and power your home. And it's kind of a constant conversation between your meter and the home. And so you are always kind of at 100%, your needs are filled at 100% at every moment. And even as your solar production kind of ebbs and flows, the grid will backfill that and kind of just push onto it what's needed or back off when needed as well. And this process is called net metering. So here's a little more, a little more detailed on what this is. And so net metering at its most basic is the net usage of electricity passing through the meter, right? So if you think about it, when you have a surplus of solar electricity, it's pushing onto the poles and wires or the grid. It's pushing through your meter, and it's kind of, spinning your meter in essence, not actually spinning, but spinning your meter in one direction. And then at night or on a rainy day, when you're pulling electricity off the grid to power your home, the meter is spinning in the other direction. And so at the end of a month, as you're billed on a monthly cycle, Dominion will look and say, well, what's the total of that meter, right? It's spanned this direction, 10 times, and that direction 8 times. I mean, very simplistic with the math. And so you'd have 2, right? And so that's what your electricity bill would be. And I've got a bit more of this in another slide here. But so that's what net metering is. Again, the meter is in constant communication with the grid or the poles and wires and your solar panels, and your home is always powered at 100%. It just might be there's times where solar powers 100% of your home, or 75% of your home, or it powers 100% of your home, and it even sends 25% to the grid. And that all kind of changes, hour by hour, day by day. And so ultimately that's called net metering. And the way net metering works in Virginia, we have a fair 1-to-1 credit. Now, this is a really critical tool for rooftop solar that we have this. And so when your home puts solar electricity kilowatt hours onto the grid, you are getting the same value for those as you are when you kind of, in essence, purchase kilowatt hours from Dominion. And so it's a 1-to-1 transfer, and that's really critical. When you're trying to recoup the return on investment. It's going to be different daily and certainly seasonally. There's going to be surpluses, and this is why it's measured really over a 12-month period. As I mentioned, you're billed on a monthly period, and so what's the end result at the end of a month of the net meter? But likely in the spring and the fall, you might have a surplus of surplus of credits. It's almost like the old rollover minutes that you might have had if you had extra minutes from one month and then you needed to use them up the next month. It's kind of the same thing. So let's say hypothetically, people build them up in the spring and the fall often, and maybe dwindle those credits down in the summer when it's hot and they're using their air conditioning and that sort of thing. And they maybe dwindle down the winter as well, because the days are much shorter. And so the solar generation, the solar production is just much lower. So ultimately, Dominion looks at it, and legally they must do this on an annual basis. And so you can have a surplus, carry over from one month to the next. You can actually carry it over for a year. If you were to carry over, month by month for forever in perpetuity, Dominion wouldn't like that. You would not be paid for that, right? You're getting a credit, but you're not going to get a check or anything like that. Legally, you can only size your system to 125% of your expected load. Your expected load is going to be based off what you used over the past 12 months. It used to be 100% that you would only be allowed to size your system at 100% of your load, but the law was changed a couple of years ago. We helped work on that. And that's so if you want to add an EV, or if you want to get an electric heat pump sometime soon, or those kind of things, but you haven't done that yet, you are allowed to oversize your system to 125%. But if you're doing that because you want to make money and sell surplus solar electricity, it doesn't work that way, and it's kind of a waste to get a large system. It's great to get a oversized system, I should say. Great to do it if you're going to add an EV or something like that in the next couple of years. But if not a good thing to do, oversizing your system simply to do that. And so again, here's the most basic effect on your bill. So hypothetically, let's say you consume 300 kilowatt hours. Doesn't matter what time of day those are consumed. Doesn't matter, whether that's from your solar array or the grid. You produce 250 kilowatt hours from your solar array. The delta there is 50 kilowatt hours. And so you would pay a bill based on that. If you were to offset 100% of your electricity, which certainly people do, you won't have a bill of zero. You will have a connection charge that's right now is about $6.58 a month plus tax. So let's say $7, $8 a month would be your minimum bill just to be connected to the grid, which is a pretty good deal considering you're pulling electricity off the grid at night and on rainy days. And as I mentioned, it's surplus is carried over month by month. Also important to note that the annual billing cycle, kind of your anniversary date, is not January 1, kind of when they would reset things. It's actually based on your interconnection date. That's the date that you're given permission to turn your system on by Dominion. So for me, it's in November. It could be April. There's not really a big difference on when it is. I just want to point out that it's not January 1. But again, that's only really a factor if you have enough surplus to generate credits. As I mentioned, my system's about 60% of my bill. Nothing I ever need to worry about. If I'm lucky, if I'm out of town and it's spring and we're not using that much, I might get a surplus 1 month and it'll quickly be used up the following month. All right, any other questions in the chat, Megan?
Not quite yet.
Great. All right, we will quickly go through the economics of solar here. Important to note, you can see in this graph the cost of solar has dropped dramatically from the 1970s. Even since 2010, they have dropped 73%. Also important to note that solar, as I mentioned, is a long-term investment, right? Your system is expected to last 25 years at a minimum, no moving parts. One of the great things about solar is it's a way to hedge against rising utility rates. Usually when we factor in return on investment, we're doing that with the expectation that electricity rates will increase 2 to 3% a year. Last year with the war in Ukraine and the spike in natural gas prices, electricity rates were increasing 8-9%. You're really insulated from all that if you have solar. In Virginia, the average return on investment, I think it's really more like 8 to 12 or even 8 to 10, depending on how you finance it. But even 9 to 13, you're going to get years to recoup the cost of your investment. You can see that's half of the time span of 25 years. And so in essence, for half the time that you have solar, you are generating free electricity. I like to think of it as buying your electricity, right? We all know the financial benefits of buying a home rather than renting, and buying your electricity is the same thing. You can buy your electricity via solar and own it and not rent it from your electric utility forever. And that's really a strong economic motivation to get solar. How we help bring the cost down of solar. As I mentioned, kind of the labor costs are a big component of solar. Obviously, the system components, which is the panels themselves, the inverters and other things, the cost of that has come way down in the past 10 years. And then the soft costs, which is what we do here, helping organize a group and get a bulk purchase. We used to do it via solar co-ops, and we actually still do that in other parts of Virginia. But here, this is a solar switch. It's in essence the same thing, but really what that does is help reduce the soft costs so that you can save money. You can see example pricing. There's a lot of numbers here. I don't want you to get lost in this, but I just want you to be able to understand how the system pays you back. So we'll look at the right-hand column, which is the 8 kW system. As I mentioned, that's about the average system size in Virginia. And so I don't know what the exact price is for the solar switch, but it's probably in the 275 range, 275 a watt. And so 8 kW is 8,000 watts. So 8,000 times $2.75 is $22,000. The great thing about this is a turnkey price. It's not like buying a car where they're getting you with all these additional fees and this and that and the other things. It's $22,000 flat fee. Like that's your price. You will get a 30% federal tax credit Couple important things to note on this. First of all, this is federal, this is not Virginia, and this is a tax credit, not a refund. So number one, you must have tax liability sufficient enough, in this case, to have a $6,600 tax liability, right? So when and you will get it when you file your taxes the following tax year, right? So if you got solar tomorrow, you would file your taxes in February, March, April of next year, and you would apply for that 30% federal tax credit. You would still have to pay the $22,000 tomorrow, but you would get that tax credit, 6 months down the road when you're filing your taxes. But in terms of total costs, that kind of then brings your net cost down to a little over $15,000. The electricity savings, right? So this is, as we talked about, all the solar electricity that's powering your home, you are no longer paying for on your electricity bill. And so there's savings there. And so that money that you're not paying on your electricity bill is factored into the return on investment. We estimate that at $1,100 here. And again, the price of electricity goes up year over year. That's why it's not just a flat 11,000 in 10 years, but we very conservatively estimate 11,700. In a lifetime, that would be over $32,000. That's with the solar renewable energy credits. So the solar renewable energy credits are another factor in paying off your system. They are actually revenue. And so they're often called SRECs or SREC. So SRECs, solar renewable energy credits. As the way to understand this is, as someone that has renewable energy in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you are a renewable energy producer in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that has value. By law, Dominion is required to produce a certain amount of renewable energy in a year. If they can't meet that, they could buy that credit from you. Additionally, there's data centers in Prince William County. There's companies, Google and Amazon and Facebook and others, that want to be able to literally take credit for the solar that you're generating and say that they are powering their facility with 100% Virginia renewable energy. And so they would take credit for your solar production. And so there's value there, and you can sell that on the market, kind of just like you would sell anything else on Wall Street. And so there's a handful of brokers in Virginia, and for each kilowatt hour, 1 kilowatt hour production, you get a SREC. And so an 8 kW system is probably going to get somewhere between 8 and 10 kilowatt hours of production a year. And so we estimate that as $9,000. That's a conservative estimate. There's a lot of ways you could go on the SRECs. You can do a lump sum cash payment, kind of selling your SRECs for 25 years. You could sell them for 10 years. You can sell them for 5 years, 3 years. You could sell them every quarter, which is called the spot market. And so it kind of depends on how much you need the cash. You obviously will get more money the shorter term contract you have. If you sell them for 10 years, it's going to be a pretty low price. Whereas if you sell them spot market or a year in advance, you'll get a higher price. That's probably somewhat confusing. We have a whole hour-long webinar on SRECs, but the important thing to know is, again, it's another way to generate revenue on this and to help pay back the cost of your investment. And then again, I mentioned the federal tax credit. Just important to note, it had been at 26% and then was going down to 22%, and it was going to sunset completely until the Inflation Reduction Act bumped it back up to 30% for 10 years. So that's great news. And then it'll sunset. You can see it winding down in 2033 and 2034, and then sunset after that. But you've got a good long while to get the federal tax credit. And in terms of financing, there's a variety of ways to finance your system. Obviously, you could do some of the standard stuff, like take it out home equity line of credit. You could refinance your home and include solar. You could get just a standard loan like you might from your neighborhood bank. Most installers will offer financing, kind of specific solar financing through their financing companies. And then there's also a couple of credit unions out there that specialize in solar and other renewable green technologies. The Clean Energy Credit Union, which is national, based out of Colorado, they will finance solar arrays and electric vehicles and other kind of green technologies. And then Community First Credit Union specializes in solar loans as well. And with that, I'll take a quick pause to check on the chat from Megan.
Yeah, we've gotten a few questions in. Let's see. Lucas asked, do warranties transfer if you were to buy a home with a system already installed?
Yeah, so the warranties usually they certainly would transfer. They go with the manufacturer most often. And so, the solar panel manufacturer, so it doesn't matter who owns the home, the solar panel is going to be warranted, again, most likely 25 years. But yeah, it's usually on the solar system itself. So it doesn't really matter on the homeowner. So that should be fine. Certainly you'd want to confirm that, but that's industry standard.
Great, thank you. And then Rose asked, could you please discuss the wiring from panels to the box? Is there extensive rewiring? She lives in a 8-unit condo.
So the most common way for a panel to get wired to the box is a conduit run. In a home that's often on the outside of the house and running down the wall and maybe poking in a hole right by the electrical panel. It can also be done through the roof, through the attic. If you're in an 8-unit condo, certainly the installer would need to kind of probably size it up and figure out the easiest way to do that. Again, usually that's on the outside, just because you're not poking through walls and ceilings and all that sort of stuff. Also depends on where the electrical panels are located. So is it complicated? Usually it's not complicated on a multifamily housing. Perhaps, especially if they're not able to do the run on the exterior of the building, that's the easiest.
Great, thank you. And then Tracy, for question now is, can you install a system and sell the energy versus using it?
You can't sell the energy if you mean like selling it to Dominion. That's not allowed. And so that's where you would not want to oversize your system. You do get, as I mentioned earlier, credits, right? Kind of like store credit. You're not going to get cash if you don't use it for 1 month or a couple of months or what have you. But ultimately, those credits would ultimately go away after 2 years.
Great, thank you.
All right. And then we'll talk about the solar switch, which is our capital area solar switch. So this is a bulk purchase buying group. Here at Solar United Neighbors, we've been doing bulk purchase groups in Northern Virginia since about 2014. So I have a lot of experience in these bulk buying group programs. This is a voluntary group that leverages discounts. Our job is to give you the tools to make an informed decision. Ultimately, it's not a contract between Solar United Neighbors and you. We kind of facilitate a group. We put out an RFP. We do a rigorous installer vetting and background check, do a competitive price auction. But really, so we're kind of facilitating the solicitation of bids and doing background checks and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, this is between you and the solar installer. We are here to be your guide, hold your hand, educate and empower you throughout the process, answer any questions you might have. It's important to know there is a beginning and an end. So the group launched back in May. It actually finishes up August 30th. So if you wanted to join the group, you would need to do that here pretty quickly. We also want you to become part of the growing solar movement. As I mentioned, we don't just help people go solar, but we join together to do events and build community. And then also we're always up for advocacy at the General Assembly. As an example, right now, the top priority I'm working on and we'll be working on up until January is establishing some additional consumer protections for solar consumers. Not really an issue with these bulk purchase campaigns, but folks sometimes are getting taken advantage of. some of these national companies come in, haven't been in Virginia before, and maybe are over promising and under delivering sometimes, and taking advantage of folks that don't know what they should be looking for, don't know that SRECs are something that they should own and not the installer. Sometimes people are told that the federal tax credit's a tax refund and they're expected to get that. And so working on establishing legislative protections for solar consumer protection. So that'll be something that we're doing this fall, and meeting with legislators and all sorts of stuff. So lots of things at Solar United Neighbors that you can participate in terms of becoming a solar champion for the Commonwealth. But for this specific occasion, it is to be part of the bulk purchase campaign. Again, it's free, it's voluntary. You can join. There's no pressure to go solar. It's ultimately, if you want to hop in and see if you're maybe interested in going solar, you can get a free quote and determine if it might be something that's good for you. As I mentioned, it's a great economic investment. If you're going to be, you plan to be in your home for a long time, it does take a while to pay off, but if you're not planning on going anywhere, it could be a great investment. Like I said, it's owning your electricity rather than renting it from your electric utility forever. So as I mentioned, we are in the final stages of this group. We've got another several weeks to get in. You don't have to go solar by August 30th. You have to at least join the group. You would probably have to, commit to going solar probably in September at some point. The installer would, if you join the group, the installer would reach out to you and get you a customized proposal based on your electricity usage, your home, the solar potential, all that sort of thing. And you would ultimately have 30 days to make a decision once you got an actual bid. Installations usually are about 3 to 6 months out. So if you decided to go solar, in September, as an example, I'd say unlikely you would get installed this year. Maybe not impossible. You might get installed in December. Certainly folks install solar year round, but just, there's a long line of folks going solar, but perhaps that would be something between you and the installer. If you needed that tax credit or something for this year, you might be able to get that in. But that would be, again, something to ask the installer. And then all the installations are expected to be finished by February. And then, as I mentioned, we will likely have an event, a celebration of some kind in the spring up in the Northern Virginia. And certainly we encourage all of you to come. Hopefully I'll see you earlier at the General Assembly doing something like that. And, what do you do next? You can sign up for the Solar Switch. If you just go to solarswitch.com to Virginia, you can also go to our webpage, which is solarunitedneighbors.org, and just click on Virginia, and you'll see that this capital area solar switch as an example there. You could also Google capital area solar switch. So there's a lot of ways to get to the capital area solar switch. I just want to leave you with one important message: is to be a smart consumer. Solar is a great option, whether the solar switch is good for you or not. If you don't think it is, you're welcome to go out and get a couple proposals and bring those to us. We will look at them for you for free. We call that our 15-minute solar consultation. You could get solar proposals from any installer, across Northern Virginia, and we'll just help make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Because again, if one installer is saying electricity costs are going to increase 3% a year and another one's saying 5%, your ROI is going to look a lot different solely on that one input. And there's probably about 10 other things they could change slightly to make the ROI look different. So really encourage you to be a smart consumer. We're here to help do our best for you, again, whether it's through the solar switch or on your own. That's what we're here for. So please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me or anybody on my team at VA, like Virginia VA team, at solarunitedneighbors.org. And we'd be happy to help you in any way we can. And again, you got until August 30th to join the solar switch. So with that, happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to Megan.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, we do have a few questions that have come in. One that came in earlier from Megan was, she was interested in the criteria you might have to ensure that the vendor is selling solar panels that do not have connections to forced labor.
do not selling the panels that don't have connection to forced labor? That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, there has been some tariff, or what, I'm trying to think if I can think of the language right now. But there's been an investigation by the Commerce Department, I think, at the U.S. Commerce Department in panels produced in China. Not to say Chinese panels, all Chinese panels have forced labor by any means, but I think there's been some concerns about that over there. Additionally, you know, I'm not knowledgeable enough to be an expert on this subject. I think we're seeing some of that with EV batteries as well. So I guess the short answer is I don't have enough. These, I wouldn't say these panels are certified to my knowledge in that, although they may be. That I guess maybe the installer might have a better sense of that as they're managing the supply chain of panels.
Thank you. And I think maybe just a little clarification with using the different terms of solar switch versus solar co-op. Are they essentially the same, or?
They're essentially the same. The solar co-op is what we used to do, and we still do in other parts. There's a couple small differences, but in essence, they're, and I probably didn't put in my slides enough because I know I saw co-op in there a couple times. But the short story is they're both bulk purchase campaigns that we help organize and convene, and so, you know, get a bulk discount for folks. How the process works is slightly different in a co-op than it is in the solar switch, but in essence, you know, 99% of it's the same.
Great, thank you. And I think you answered this, but just to reiterate the point, there's at this point there's no fee to join or have to actually go through with it. Is that right?
No fee to join the solar switch. No requirement to go through with it. No, you're you know, it's free to join. Obviously, if you wanted to go solar, there would be a cost there, and so there, you know, if you start to kind of go down that path, you would ultimately have to pay, I think it's $150 deposit and some other things. But in terms of like just joining the solar switch and you know, getting kind of a free quote. That is all free, and there's no obligation no commitment on your end to go solar at any point.
Okay, great. And again, that they have until August 30th
August
to sign
30th,
up.
yep, is when this group closes. We might have another group popping up in the winter. We're still trying to figure that out. But yeah, for right now, this group closes August 30th. So you need to kind of get your name in the hopper, so to speak, no later than August 30th.
Okay, so just to piggyback on that, so say you sign up now and decide maybe you're not quite ready, would you then be available or able to join when you do another campaign?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we often have that folks might join and be ready 3 years later. You know, maybe looking at, oh, these trees need to get cut down, or I need to do my new roof, or I want to do this addition first. And 3 years later, 2 years later, a tree goes down in a storm or something like that. So yeah, there's kind of no pressure there. And you know, different timelines work for different folks. And so yeah, it's just if you want to take advantage of this opportunity, it's, you know, get your name in the hat by August 30th.
Great, thank you. And then Megan asked, can you say the name of the home insurance provider that has the higher rates?
I can't, no. And things might have changed, you know. I guess, yeah, again, it's not to say none of them would have a higher rate. It's if one of them were to have a significant jump to where you go, well, I don't want to use solar. It's incredibly costly on a homeowner's insurance. We would just encourage you to shop around.
Great. And so thank you for sharing these resources. We'll send out a follow-up email. So if you saw some of these links and didn't get a chance to copy them down, we'll make sure that you can get to those easily. And if you have more questions, I don't see any more questions in the chat. We do have a couple minutes if anyone has last burning question they'd like to put in. But Ben, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to explain this to us and work to help people get to this point and make that switch. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Megan, for the opportunity, and really appreciate everyone's participation this evening. And yeah, we hope to hear from you all soon. Again, whether it's Solar Switch advocacy, or simply you want to come have a beer with us, next spring when we do a happy hour, we're thrilled to have you there as well.
Sounds great. All right, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Good
great
night
evening.
now.